My wife cheated on me with Tinder while I paid for everything. She planned a divorce to steal $50K from me, but I projected all the evidence on TV during our family gathering and left everyone speechless. I'm 34 years old. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I make pretty good money. I'm not a millionaire or anything like that, but I have a stable job at a manufacturing company where I basically design automation systems for industrial plants. I married Kimberly 6 years ago, when we were both like 28, and during the first few years, everything seemed normal. You know, the typical young marriage things where you're learning how to live with another person and adjusting to all that. She was working part-time at a boutique when we got married, but like 2 years in, she quit that job because, according to her, the stress wasn't worth it for how little they paid. And I was making enough for both of us, so I told her it was fine, that she could take her time finding something better. What I didn't know at the time was that taking her time would turn into basically never working again. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. We live in a house that I bought before we got married. Nothing fancy, but it's a nice place in a decent neighborhood, 3 bedrooms, small yard, the basic American dream or whatever. Kimberly took care of the house, supposedly, although the truth is I ended up doing most things because I'd come home from work and find the kitchen dirty or the laundry unwashed, and she'd be watching Netflix or on her phone. But I thought, well, maybe she had a rough day or something. I don't know. You try not to be the controlling husband who complains about everything. I paid all the bills, her car, her phone, the credit cards, basically everything, and she had access to our joint account where I deposited my salary so she could buy whatever she needed without asking my permission or anything. The thing is that like 8 months ago, maybe 9, I started noticing something was off. I can't pinpoint exactly what was first, but it was like an uncomfortable feeling. You know what I mean? Kimberly was spending a lot of time with her best friend Denise, which was normal. They'd always been close, but they started going out more often, like 3 or 4 times a week, and she'd always come back late, like 11 at night or later. When I'd ask her what they'd done, she'd give me vague answers like, "Oh, we went to dinner," or "We were at the mall," but never real details. And her phone, God, her phone became something practically glued to her hand. She'd take it even to the bathroom. She'd always put it face down, and if I walked into the room while she was using it, she'd turn it off or switch apps super quickly. The moment when everything really started going to hell was one night about 6 months ago. I had gotten home early from work, like 5 in the afternoon instead of 7 like usual, because we'd finished a project and my boss let us leave early. I got to the house and heard voices in the living room. It was Kimberly with Denise and another friend of theirs. I don't remember her name. I think it was Michelle or something. I came in through the garage door that goes straight to the kitchen, and they didn't hear me come in because they were talking really loud, laughing about something. I stayed there for a moment because I was looking for something to eat in the fridge, and then I heard my name. Kimberly was saying something like, "I don't know, girls. Sometimes I think I could get something better. You know, Andrew is a good guy, but he's so boring." And Denise laughed and said something like, "You need an upgrade, girl. Someone more exciting, with more ambition, I don't know, someone who really makes you feel alive." I stood frozen there in the kitchen, literally with the fridge door open, and kept listening. Kimberly continued saying that I was too predictable, that our life was a boring routine, that she deserved more adventure, more luxury, things like that. The third friend said something about how at least I had a good job and made good money, and Kimberly responded, "Yeah, well, that's what keeps him in the running for now. But I'm not going to stay with someone just for money. I need the complete package." They laughed more and changed the subject to something about a new restaurant. I closed the fridge, grabbed my briefcase, and went back out the way I'd come in. Sat in the car for like 20 minutes trying to process what I'd just heard. When I finally came back in, this time through the front door making noise, the friends had already left, and Kimberly was on the couch watching TV like nothing happened. I told her I'd heard part of her conversation. Not everything, just enough to know she was talking about me in a way I found very disrespectful. She immediately got defensive, saying it was just girl talk, that all women talk like that about their husbands sometimes, that it didn't mean anything, that I was overreacting. She told me that if I couldn't handle her having private conversations with her friends, then I had insecurity issues. She literally made me feel like I was the crazy one for being upset. We argued a bit more. I tried to explain to her that it wasn't about having private conversations, but about the fact that she was saying she wanted something better than her husband. And she kept minimizing it, saying I was taking things out of context. In the end, I got tired of going in circles and went to the guest room to sleep. After that, things continued more or less normal on the surface, but I started paying more attention, not in a paranoid way, but just being more aware of what was happening around me. And the truth is that the more attention I paid, the more weird things I noticed. Kimberly was going out even more than before. Now, like 4 or 5 nights a week, always with some excuse that it was important for her mental health to have time with her friends. Her way of dressing changed. She started getting way more done up, like full makeup and more provocative clothes, even to supposedly just go to dinner with the girls. She was buying new clothes constantly. I'd see the charges on the account. Hundreds of dollars on blouses, dresses, shoes, all from expensive stores. It was like 2 months after that conversation I overheard when my best friend Lucas called me on a Saturday afternoon. Lucas is an accountant, works for a big firm downtown, and he told me he needed to talk to me in person. We agreed to meet at a bar near my house, and when I got there, he had that face of, "I don't know how to tell you this, man." He told me that the night before, he'd gone to a really expensive Italian restaurant downtown, one of those where dinner for 2 runs like $300 easy, and he'd seen Kimberly there. The problem was, she wasn't with her friends, she was with a guy, a man Lucas didn't recognize, and they were sitting at an intimate corner table. And according to Lucas, they looked very comfortable together, like holding hands across the table and laughing a lot. No, maybe it was someone who looked like her, and he showed me a photo he'd taken with his phone from far away. It was her, definitely. In a red dress I'd never seen, her hair styled differently, and next to her was a guy like my age, maybe a bit older, well dressed in a suit. Lucas told me he didn't know if he should tell me or not, but that he thought I deserved to know. I thanked him and went home, where Kimberly had just arrived and was changing in the bedroom. I asked her how her night with the girls had been, and she told me super good. We went to a new bar near downtown, nothing special. I asked her which bar specifically, and she gave me the name of a place that definitely wasn't the expensive Italian restaurant where Lucas had seen her. I didn't confront her at that moment because honestly, I was trying to stay calm and think things through. There were already enough weird signs, but I needed to know exactly what was happening before doing something drastic. During the following weeks, I became more observant, and Kimberly seemed to be increasingly distracted and less interested in anything that had to do with me or our house. She stopped asking me how work had gone, stopped making any effort around the house, like she didn't even pretend she was doing anything productive during the day. I'd come home and the house was a mess, dishes in the sink from 3 days ago, clothes thrown everywhere, and she was on her phone on the couch. The opportunity to confirm my suspicions came like 3 weeks after the restaurant incident. Kimberly had gone out to Denise's house, supposedly to watch a movie, and had left her laptop on the dining room table because, according to her, the battery was dead and she'd put it to charge. I was in the kitchen making myself something for dinner when I saw the laptop there, open, and the screen had turned on by itself because she got a notification. From where I was, I could see it was a message from some app. I couldn't read exactly what it said, but I saw it said something like, "New match," or something like that. I walked over, and yes, I know, checking your wife's device is wrong and it's invasion of privacy and all that, but at that moment, I needed to know the truth. I opened the laptop. It didn't have a password because Kimberly had always been careless with those things, and the first thing I saw was that she had opened like 3 tabs from different dating apps. One was Tinder, another was Bumble, and there was another one I didn't recognize. Her Tinder profile said she was single, obviously, had photos of her I'd never seen, some were pretty suggestive, and her description said something about looking for someone ambitious and exciting who knew how to treat a woman. She had active conversations with like 10 different guys, and when I started reading the messages, I realized she'd been going out with several of them. Not just the guy from the Italian restaurant. But that wasn't even the worst part. I kept looking and found a folder in her documents called New Life Planning, and when I opened it, there was like a Word document that was basically her plan to divorce me. I'm not joking, it was literally a document detailing how she was going to find an upgrade, as she called it, someone with more money than me, more status, more ambition, and how she was going to make the transition from being with me to being with this new person. She had a list of minimum criteria for her next husband. Things like, must make at least 200K a year, must have luxury car, must be willing to travel frequently, must be social and outgoing. There was another section about how to maximize what she could get in the divorce, including notes about talking to a lawyer about alimony and division of assets. I sat there reading all this, for I don't know how long, maybe an hour, and honestly, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry or throw the laptop out the window. This woman, who I'd been completely supporting, for years, who lived in my house, drove the car I paid for, used my money for everything, was actively looking to replace me while I kept paying her bills. And not only that, but she had a detailed plan of how to get the maximum money possible from me when she finally found someone better. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was also financial, calculated, cold. I took photos of everything with my phone, the dating profiles, the conversations, the planning document, everything. I closed the laptop and left it exactly as it was. When Kimberly came back like 2 hours later, I was in the living room watching TV, acting completely normal. She asked me how my night was, and I told her fine. I ate something and watched a game. I didn't say anything about what I discovered because I needed time to think about what to do exactly. The next few days were weird. I was acting normal, but inside, I was processing all this information and deciding what my next move was. Kimberly kept behaving, as always, going out with her friends, on her phone constantly, basically ignoring me most of the time. I started consulting with a divorce lawyer, a guy named Patrick who was recommended to me by a coworker. Patrick reviewed all the photos I'd taken and told me I had a pretty solid case, that with evidence of infidelity and the fact that the house was in my name from before the marriage, plus the fact that I'd been the only financial provider, it was very likely the divorce would be favorable to me. He advised me to start protecting my assets, to open a new bank account in my name only and start depositing my salary there, leaving only the minimum necessary in the joint account. I did exactly that. I opened a new account at a different bank, changed my direct deposit from work so it went to that account, and left only like $500 a month in the joint account. Enough for some basic expenses, but nothing more. I also stopped doing all the extra things I normally did. Like I didn't wash her clothes anymore, didn't clean up her mess, didn't fill up her gas tank when I took her car. Basically, I completely disconnected from everything that wasn't strictly necessary. Kimberly noticed the change in the account after like 2 weeks, when she tried to use the credit card and it was declined. She asked me what was going on, and I told her I'd decided to make some adjustments to our finances, that she needed to start being more conscious of expenses because we couldn't keep living like money was unlimited. She got angry. Told me how was she supposed to live with only $500 a month, and I told her that maybe it was time she considered going back to work, that she'd been years without contributing anything financially to our household. That caused a huge fight, her screaming that I was controlling and abusive for cutting off her access to money, and me just staying calm, telling her I wasn't cutting off anything, that there was money available in the joint account, but I wasn't going to subsidize an excessive lifestyle anymore. The fight ended with her leaving the house for 3 days, supposedly to stay with Denise, although I knew she was probably with one of her Tinder guys. It was during those 3 days that Patrick and I finished preparing all the divorce papers. I already had all the evidence copied, had organized my finances, had even changed the passwords to all my important accounts. I was ready to end this, but I wanted to do it in a way that she couldn't manipulate the narrative, because I knew Kimberly and I knew she was going to try to play the victim, to tell everyone I was the bad guy, that I'd abandoned her or something. I needed the truth to be impossible to ignore. The perfect opportunity came like a week later. Kimberly told me she'd organized a weekend at a lake house with several friends, 3 couples including us, and that it would be good for us to spend time together and maybe reconnect. The other 2 couples were Samantha and Julia, who were Kimberly's friends from the gym, and Cameron and Bradley, who were a gay couple we knew from some cooking classes we'd taken years ago, and Corey was also going, a single friend of Cameron's. I normally would have said no, like why pretend everything was fine, but this gave me an idea. I told her yes, that it seemed fine to me, that we could try to fix things. The weekend arrived, and we all went to this lake house that Cameron had rented, a nice place like 2 hours from the city. During Friday night and Saturday morning, everything was relatively normal. Like barbecues, drinking, playing board games, typical weekend stuff with friends. Kimberly was on her best behavior, acting like the perfect wife, glued to me, holding my hand, all that performance. I played along, being nice and normal, although inside I was waiting for the right moment. The moment came Saturday afternoon. We were all in the living room after eating, relaxed, some drinking wine, and someone suggested watching a movie. I offered to connect my laptop to the TV so we could watch something on Netflix. Everyone said yes, and I connected my laptop to the TV using an HDMI cable. What they didn't know was that I already had prepared a slideshow with all the screenshots I'd taken. Kimberly's Tinder profiles, her conversations with other men, her new life planning document, everything organized chronologically with dates. I opened the file and projected it on the big TV screen. The first slide said, "The truth about my marriage," and the second showed Kimberly's Tinder profile with her photo and description. There was absolute silence in the room, everyone staring at the screen, not understanding what was happening. Kimberly turned white, literally white, and looked at me like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I didn't say anything, just let the slides advance automatically, each one showing more evidence. Conversations where she told a guy that her husband was boring and she couldn't wait to leave him. Photos she'd sent to other men, and finally her document where she planned how to divorce me and maximize what she could get from me. When the last slide appeared, which was simply the text, "And that's why we're getting divorced," Kimberly was crying, trying to say that I was invading her privacy, that this was cruel, that how could I humiliate her like this? Our friends were in absolute shock, some with their mouths open, others looking at their hands uncomfortably. I calmly got up, grabbed my briefcase where I'd brought the divorce papers, took them out and put them in front of Kimberly on the coffee table. I told her, "These are the divorce papers. They're already signed by me. I just need you to sign them. Patrick, my lawyer, is going to contact you next week for the details." Samantha tried to say something about how maybe this was something we should discuss in private, but Julia shut her up and told me she understood why I'd done it this way, that Kimberly deserved to be exposed. Cameron was shaking his head, telling Kimberly he couldn't believe she'd done something like this, that I'd been nothing but good to her. Bradley and Corey didn't say anything, just stayed there processing everything. I gathered my things, my car keys, and left the lake house. I drove the 2 hours back to the city with a strange feeling, like a mix of relief and sadness, but also some satisfaction that finally the truth was out. The days and weeks after that were chaos. Kimberly tried to call me like 1,000 times, sending me text messages begging that we talk, that she could explain everything, that she'd made a mistake. I blocked her number and only communicated with her through Patrick. She hired her own lawyer, obviously, but didn't have much to work with given that all the evidence of her infidelity was irrefutable. Some of the friends from the group contacted me to apologize for not having known what was happening, saying that Kimberly had always given them a different version of things, that they never imagined she was capable of something like this. Denise, Kimberly's best friend, at first tried to defend her, but when more details came to light, even she distanced herself. Kimberly's family also found out. Her sister Kay called me to tell me she was horrified with what her sister had done, that she'd always thought I was a good guy and didn't deserve that. Her dad sent me a message saying he was disappointed in his daughter and completely understood my decision. Her cousin Emma, who Kimberly ended up staying with while the divorce was being processed, told me later that Kimberly had spent weeks crying and trying to justify her actions, but that she couldn't understand either how she'd thought what she was doing was okay. The divorce process took like 4 months total. Patrick did an excellent job making sure I didn't have to pay alimony. Given that Kimberly had been unfaithful and there was evidence of her, planned to exploit the divorce financially. She kept her car, which was technically in her name, even though I'd paid for it, and some of her personal stuff, but the house and all the accounts stayed with me. She had to get a job finally. I think she ended up working at a department store or something. Nothing exciting, definitely. As for me, I started rebuilding my life. I went back to the gym more consistently, focused on my work, started going out more with Lucas and other friends I'd been neglecting during my marriage. Like 3 months after the divorce, I met a woman at the gym. Her name is Rebecca. She's a physical therapist, and we started talking casually. We haven't started anything serious yet. We've only gone out a couple times for coffee and dinner, but it's refreshing to talk to someone who has her own ambitions, her own job, her own life. You know, someone who's not looking for someone else to support them. The last time I heard about Kimberly was like 2 months ago. Lucas told me he'd seen her at the supermarket and she looked very different, like she'd gained weight, wasn't done up like before, and basically had that appearance of someone who life had given a hard shake. Part of me feels sorry for her, honestly, because at the end of the day she destroyed her own life by being greedy and dishonest, but most of me just feels nothing. She made her choices and now has to live with the consequences. What I learned from all this is that you can't take for granted that someone loves you just because they're with you or because they say the right words. Actions are what matter. And Kimberly's actions clearly showed that she never really valued me as a person, only as a source of financial stability, while she looked for something better. I'm glad I discovered the truth when I did, before we had kids or before more years of my life passed. Yes, it hurt. And yes, it was humiliating in a sense to discover your wife is actively trying to replace you, but in the end, I came out of it stronger, and with clarity about what I want and what I'm not going to tolerate in future relationships.